Hey everyone, welcome to Launch's first LinkedIn Live of the year. Very, very exciting. And you know how enthusiastic I am to introduce one of our experts here at Launch. Today we're going to do a little intro and the fun fact, which is my favorite bit. The fun fact this time, we've done, I think, like barbecue items before. We've done all sorts.
You've had a whole range.
We're whole range. This time we're going to do our first ever album. So I'm Jaye. I'm the CEO and founder of Launch, the happy performance marketing agency. And I'm here to speak to Katt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katt. I am paid social director at Launch. I joined in November. I come from about 10 years experience as a social specialist. I started out at a B2B agency in London and spent the last 7 years or so at eBay. So I have a wealth of experience, obviously, from what I was doing there, ranging from when we didn't have the Facebook pixel and we're doing blind traffic through to full funnel metrics measuring everything. And so I am very excited to be doing all of this, frankly.
And what was your first album, Katt?
So I remember that my first CD was Baby One More Time by Britney Spears, but that was the single. And I think my first album possibly was Now 44 in 1999.
I love that.
It was a good one.
I'm going to be really showing my age here. So the first album I was bought was a tape cassette, and it was 5-star. I don't think I even listened to it that much, and I should have done. But the first one that I bought myself was Kylie, the one with her with the hat and everything, which I listened to on repeat a lot and probably did dance routines too as well.
Yeah, I did plenty of dance routines to the Now albums.
So hopefully that's given people a bit of time to join. We're here for 30 minutes today, and we're going to be talking everything about Pinterest and Pinterest trends. Pinterest to me is one of, I think, the most positive and awesome social media platforms, as well as being super underutilized by most brands. It's got the opportunity for commerce, high intent searches, inspiration, content ideas. And we thought we'd take this opportunity to have Katt on one of these LinkedIn Lives, because I think at eBay, didn't you spearhead the adoption of Pinterest?
Yeah, pretty much. We were very, very meta heavy, obviously, just in terms of efficiency. But I was basically tasked with make Pinterest work, please. So I was given a budget to do that. We focused very heavily at the time on the home category. I pulled together basically a full funnel approach over a kind of 3 to 6 month period, working out all the different metrics, doing all the technical integrations, getting everything in there, running different lift studies and things. It was a very intense but exciting thing to do, actually. So
Amazing.
Yeah, we got a lot of learnings from that.
So for those of the people who are watching it live, do ask questions. This is your opportunity to ask Katt questions, to find out as much as you can. And if you're watching it back, then why not drop her a DM on LinkedIn? I'm going to quickly pop up here our resources page, because we've done several events where Pinterest have been the headline speaker. So back on the resources page, you can actually hear from Pinterest themselves at some of our previous events. And this year, on the 26th of March, we're hosting a conference in Bristol, CMO's Guide to Performance Marketing, and Pinterest are about to be announced as one of our headline speakers. So definitely make sure that you get your tickets for that. But right now, tell me, first of all, Katt, what is it that CMOs need to know about Pinterest reports and trends? Tell me what's happened so far this year.
Yeah, for sure. So I think everyone kind of knows of Pinterest, and I think there's a bit of a misconception that it's an additional platform if you have the budget to do it. Whereas there's a lot of information, resource that they provide that's free. And it's things that don't have to be used specifically on the Pinterest platform. They can be used anywhere. It's part of why I'm a huge advocate for Pinterest on the whole, because it's such an interesting platform and used in such a different way to kind of other social medias. You know, you have people using very, very visual things and pinning things that they're interested in, that they're planning to do, things that inspire them. Like, it's a very inspirational, aspirational type platform. And so every year around the December-January period, Pinterest release a predicts report, which I think they call it their not yet trending report. So it's things that they predict are going to be big trends for the upcoming year. And I was attending a webinar of theirs actually this morning, where I think it was 80% of the trends that they have anticipated over the last few years have actually fully come to fruition. So
wow, that's a good hit rate.
Exactly. So they know what they're talking about. And the data for that comes from like so many data points, billions of keywords, really assessing what users are doing over time through the year and how those trends are growing. So that's the one side of it in terms of this report. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But they also have tools that are available all through the year that you can mess around with yourself. And you can delve in, put in keywords, put in interests, and understand trends within your audience or within your ideal audience, how those are moving around, and then assess how you could use those basically in activity anywhere. They can inform creative direction, they can inform your campaign timing, the terminology you use, the models that you use. There's so much that you could do with it.
And they can inspire content on other channels as well, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I say when it's not just specific to Pinterest. If you know that, for example, a certain color scheme is beginning to trend, or we see it trend year over year in a kind of March, April time, maybe you could be planning ahead now and using that color scheme in your creative across your Meta, your Google, your display activity. There's lots of different ways that you can use it.
One of our key client kind of industries is travel. And I sometimes find when I'm talking to CMOs of travel companies that they're like, oh, well, no, that's just for homeware, or it's just for, but it really isn't. It can inspire people. People are showing their intent to purchase or plan or do something.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can use that to inspire all kinds of different sectors, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the predicts report is a really interesting way of looking at that. And Pinterest themselves actually give some really interesting ways that you can use some of these things. So one of the trends for this year is called cherry coded. And it's very much focusing around, cherries as a fruit, but also the color scheme and everything that goes along with that. And so that could be that a fashion brand is going to focus on that kind of shiny, pleathery type look. It might be the color palette of that deep red. If you're a foodie brand, it might be sharing recipes, looking at stone fruits and things. If you're a homeware brand, it might be using dark red wallpapers or items that kind of fit into that material. And as I say, like, you could literally just use it in terms of the color scheme. So whatever industry you're in, if you just have the background of your ads in this kind of deeper red color, that's something that is showing as growing throughout the year and something that people are probably going to be engaging with.
Amazing. Well, shall we dive into your presentation then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've put together just a kind of quick overview here of the Trends tool, which is at trends.pinterest.com. And you can also download a version of this that has a bit more commentary and talks through the Pinterest Predicts report as well. But so this Trends tool, if you're logged in as your brand, we'll give you this overview at the top of growing trends that your audience loves. And this is super interesting, especially as you start kind of going through the different interests. So you can select your country in the top right. So here, for example, I've included GB and Ireland. And as an overall, within the trends that my audience is loving, we've got things like fisherman core, spring decor, 2025 fashion. They're a little bit,
by the way, I love, because we've got the Cornish fishmonger as one of our clients. Shout out to the Cornish fishmonger. It might be the year of fish influencing more of our clients.
absolutely, clearly. So this this number that shows underneath these is essentially how high your audience is indexing against the average Pinterest user. So specifically around fisherman core here, for example, our audience in the account that I'm in is searching for this almost 32 times more than the average user. So these are really great insights into, what your audience is looking at. And if you go more specific than that, so I've gone into home decor here as an interest, then we start to see things that are going to be much more relevant to the actual product range that we have. So you can see the percentages here are huge.
Yeah,
so 300 times
definitely.
more searches than the average user when it comes to things like gingham bedding, mixed pattern.
I've got to be honest, mixed pattern bedding is something that I don't think my OCD can cope with.
It's funny though, because the predicts report actually thinks that the kind of mix and match side of things is going to be really big this year.
Wow.
So
Not in my house, Katt. Not in my house.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. I'm very much one singular color, so stick to that. But yeah, so this could give us some really interesting little nuggets of information about things like that. But you can also see there's like English cottage bedroom on the next page of this. You've got like vintage rooms and homes, cozy homes. So there's a lot that you could take from this, whether that's maybe thinking about the product range that you've got. What are the products that you want to be pushing this year? What is the kind of way you're going to be talking to your audiences in the copy that you include? How are you going to structure your photo shoots? Like all of these kind of things are quite important. But it can also
even feed into copy for SEO. You could do a blog on yeah.
Well, it's exactly that. And it can feed into your targeting as well. So if you know that people are really looking around these sort of things, like around vintage, cozy, you could use those keywords on Pinterest, but you could also use them as interests on Meta or keywords on Google. It really kind of depends. It can be used everywhere, basically. Yeah. And that's why I love it so much. And then on the last page of this as well, then I included this because it goes much more specific into actually some of the items in the home. So you could use this as a bit of inspiration of, oh, people are thinking about how to decorate their mantelpiece. So let's think about maybe we could position picture frames or vases or whatever else, and really think about the way that you're putting together the creative in that way. So if you scroll down on the page, this is the main gist of the trends report. And so there are 4 different types of trends that you can look through. So you've got growing trends, which is things that are growing in the last 90 days. You've got seasonal trends, which are how things are changing year over year when they sit in that same seasonal period. You've got yearly trends, so 365 days, and then monthly trends for 30 days. So within that, as you change those around, you can also change your end date. So you're not stuck to only looking at things that are trending right now. You can change that and say, I'd like to have a look what was happening last summer, for example. And you'll see you get this overview of all the different keywords. You have an idea of their search volumes and also those graphs over time of how those things are changing, as well as a summary in terms of percentages of those weekly, monthly, and yearly changes. So you can see how some of those are very intense in terms of the amount that they're changing. So kitchen inspo, for example, has a 10,000% plus yearly change, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So a lot you can take from that. And so what you can also do is you can be more specific and then delve into interests again, and you can also include keywords. So here I've used an example just from a homeware brand where they specialize in bedding. So I've selected the home decor interest and included the keyword bedding. And so then I can see that you get white bedding, green bedding, pink, cute, all of these different things. And I know, for example, that gingham bedding is something that is within the product range. So I can see the change over time as I'm looking at this for the year. But if I click into that and I'm able to click through into any of these, then you get these much larger views essentially that give you the interest over time. So this one is for the last year, but you can go up to the past 2 years, which can help you identify where these different peaks are happening. So the red arrows that I've included here is as you're heading into the summer, so kind of August, September, is where a lot of people are looking for gingham bedding.
And it's important to get ahead of that trend, isn't it? Because if you're able to know that that's about to come, it's, you know, a bit like with travel. Everyone thinks, okay, well, January is the big month. Well, actually, that consideration period starts in towards the end of November and heavily in December. If you're not there predicting it in in December, it's sometimes too late by the time you jump on it in January.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. The yellow arrows here are kind of around the new year, and you can see how they start to pick up. And so you can be there from a demand gen type place very much in the moment. But what is important is really getting in ahead, as you said. So if you know that the peak is happening in August, be starting your activity kind of in that June, July time, and really allowing your brand to sit comfortably within that consideration set. And I think that's really important. What you can also do here, so it includes some related trends, and so you can click on those and then it shows you how they also are changing over time in comparison. And what I've highlighted here is I selected English cottage bedroom because I thought that was a kind of related enough term in terms of the styling, but you can see where they're actually peaking at the same times. So if you're using that in the creative or the way that you're talking about it, maybe the dress style that you put your models in and things, you can really plan ahead to how these things are going to match up, know that they're hitting those peaks at a certain point together. And then again, that can inform targeting, timing, everything else. You also get a view of the demographic information for the different trends. So this can be helpful to understand what people are doing within that, but also maybe it's to do with your ideal persona. So you could look at these and say, well, actually our ideal persona is a bit older than this. So how do we best approach that? Or they hit exactly where we need to be. So let's really drill into this trend, for example. And then you also get some kind of popular pins, which can be helpful for inspiration. But it also can help you work out where you can stand out, because you can see, obviously, a lot of these look quite similar. I mean, it's bedding. There's only so much you can do with it to an extent. However, if you're seeing the kind of similarities between what's going out there, maybe it gives you and your creative team a really fun idea of how you could be very, very different. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, and video is still a very much underutilized medium on Pinterest. It really jumps out when you see a video pin.
Massively so. And then just another tool that you can use within Pinterest is just audience insights. So as you're running activity on Pinterest, or if you have an organic profile, then you can see more about what your audience is interested in. So for example, again, here I've gone into home decor specifically, but then you can see within that room decor and storage and organization are some of the kind of top level bits there. So again, maybe it's making clear some of the organizational products that you have, or make sure you're including drawer sets and bedside tables and things like that in your creative that kind of bring everything together. And again, you can see things like age, gender, location, and device. And this can, again, kind of feed into that ideal persona, but also tell you a lot about where your audience currently are. So an example I used here in the video that I recorded is you can see that iPhone is huge in comparison to everything else. So maybe if you have an app, then you could use that in an app download campaign and really focus in on iOS users. Or maybe in your creative, you wanted to include something like an airdrop type element, because you know that majority of your audience are on iPhone. They're going to recognize that and kind of fits in.
And portrait versus landscape, making sure that your formats are correct. So you just mentioned there that you recorded a video. Part of this LinkedIn Live has got some additional resources kind of sitting behind it. Quickly, just tell us about those resources, and I will just pop up the little QR code that would take us there.
Yes, so I wrote a blog post or an article about this topic as well, so you can read that in your own time, and I included a video in that where I take you through how to use this tool kind of step by step, and there's also a download, which is basically these slides plus some wording on them to kind of give you a bit of an overview of how to do things. So hopefully those should be very useful offline tools, basically.
So if you're watching this and you want to share it with your team, or send them that download, just scan the QR code and that will take you there.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then I only have a couple of slides left on this part, and then I know we've got a question to discuss as well. So Another thing that you can do within the audiences tool is you can compare your audience versus the average Pinterest audience. So again, it's kind of that understanding, how do the people engaging with your content on Pinterest index against the kind of average user. So where you can see how much more they're into home decor, even though home decor is a huge part of Pinterest, obviously. And that, again, the kind of storage and organization, it's massively over-indexing for the audience that actually engages with our content. And you've again got the same thing where you can see the demographic information and again that iPhone side of things. This brand very much sitting users on iPhone. But this is super helpful information to understand, especially from your core existing audience and people who are already engaging versus who you may be wanting to reach. So you can see the gaps potentially when you're looking at kind of that net new prospecting side of things and how that different audience differs from the people who are currently engaging.
Awesome. That was a really brilliant overview. And we do have a question. So I'm going to pop it up onto the screen. Hattie, big shout out to you. Always comes to our events and is a wonderful person to have within our community. So the question is, how do you work with trending colors when you have specific brand guidelines that you need to stick to?
It is tricky, but I think obviously I talked quite specifically, and I think this came in around the time I was talking about the cherry coded side of things, and that kind of deep red and everything else is what's going on with the trend. But within a lot of brand guidelines, you have that kind of range of colors. And so maybe it's more just leaning into the pinky red tones that you have available within your kind of brand colors. But also you can use the tools that I was mentioning and see if there's any other colors that seem to be trending through the times as well. Because you might find that, say, for example, your brand is very heavy on navy, that at certain times of the year or in certain audience segments that navy is huge. And so you can really kind of lean into that. But yeah, appreciate it can be tricky at times, but I think there's ways to include those things, maybe less overtly sometimes than others as well.
Amazing. A great answer then, a great question. Thank you, Hattie. If anyone else has got any questions, do drop them in. One of the things that you talked about is the fact that this is giving you lots of audience insights that can inspire you to create content or advertising. How about how those would be applied across other platforms? You mentioned, Meta. How would you take some of that information, apply it across other platforms?
Yeah, so I think it can give you an idea of the type of person, and obviously we talk about things like the ideal customer profile as well. And I think you can use ideas of the targeting and things across a lot of the different platforms. So I was saying about the kind of keywords of the trends on Pinterest could be used on search. If you're looking into the specifics of those interests, as we were around like storage and organization or room decor, those are interest terms that you could use on something like Meta. But you could also use a lot of that terminology and insight into the creative itself or the copy. So it could be as simple as making sure the terminology is similar. So when you're writing the copy that either goes with your social ad or actually sits on the asset, keeping it consistent with the things that you're learning from those trends, essentially. I lost my train of thought there. I was going to say something else.
And I've got a massive airplane just flew over my house. I don't know if you heard that or not. Within Pinterest itself, so some of the things that were coming up there were keywords.
Yes.
That then feeds into advertising. We haven't, this session isn't really that much about advertising, but how do you then feed that information within the trends report and the trends that are unique to that account into the advertising?
Well, so I think there's a lot of ways you can do it. And I think, if you're planning out your year or two ahead and you're thinking about maybe the different campaigns that you want to be doing, I think that can be a really interesting, important way of looking into that. So with some of the trends, for example, maybe it's that, they're going to start appearing around the summertime. And so you can think, well, our big campaign that we're going to launch in summer is going to focus around that idea. And again, it can be very specific to the sort of trend stuff that we were looking at, or those predicted trends, or it could really just be those like nuggets of inspiration, because it doesn't have to be now that every brand is going to suddenly do this deep red color, but maybe it's that, you know, as a home brand that does have some big restrictions, maybe it's on the table where you've got the plates and things that you're using a lot more stone fruits and things, or you've got pies and stuff, and it can be as big or as little, I guess, as you want it to be from there.
I also saw within the keywords there, it was coming up with variations of the keywords you might not think of, like cute bedding, rather than just bedding, or gingham bedding, which is what is the product that's being advertised. You've got cute bedding, or country house bedding, and that, and I think
it can be so helpful to build out more of that when it comes to, you know, targeting or copy or whatever it is, because I think as marketers, like, we can get so siloed in on exactly what it is that we need, and you know, if you're trying to reach people because you're selling bedding, then that you're obviously going to be wanting to be targeting people who are interested in bedding, but those people have interests outside of that. And so it's kind of building out, I think, that persona almost, and working out kind of where else can you reach them, what are the other things they might be searching for that are akin but not exact. You know, what other
example, we've done some work with Cornish sea salt before, and you know, recipes, people will be searching recipes, and then you can show advertising for Cornish sea salt, because that is something that can go along with the recipes.
It's exactly that. It's finding those ties between things, I think.
Yeah, we've got a question from our very own Molly. How far ahead can I look at the trends? I'd love to work these things into my content strategy with respect for all my internal processes. She's very good at an internal process and approvals we go through.
So as I was kind of sharing, where you get those views in terms of like 30-day, 90-day, 365, then that can give you a bit of an idea in terms of the timing. So it can obviously be useful to understand how things change year over year, because I think there's a lot of trends that are pretty consistent. So what I was showing with the arrows on it, if you remember, we're showing those different peaks, and they're very consistent through time. And so that gives you a big opportunity to actually be able to plan for those sort of things. But part of the I think the beauty of both the kind of predicts report and the trends tool is you're getting a view into things that are not yet trending. So it's those things that are growing. And so getting into it while those things are growing to be there at the right times, I think, is kind of part of the conversation. You know,
and it's the beginning of the year. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was an amazing video that I saw, I think on TikTok or something, where it was when Barbie came out, and the content team finally get their pink tea bags or whatever it's signed off, and it's 4 months after the Barbie movie is launched and nobody's talking about it anymore. So it's an understanding of working within your internal processes, working within your brand guidelines to still allow creativity. You can also, I don't know if you saw on all of that, people who are watching, because you definitely will know, Katt, there's lots of these things can be exported. So you can use things like Notebook LM to import lots of this information and then ask it questions. You know, I am a clothing brand. How can I use these keywords to come up with, you know, and it's taking inspiration and then applying it to your brand with knowing what those internal problems or slow processes are.
And I think you reminded me, actually, because I saw some, I think it was IKEA ads recently, where they were using like the Harlem Shake, and the whole thing that they're going with is this better late than never.
Oh, like, I love that.
Throwing yourself into trends kind of after the fact can also then make you a trendsetter again. And I think there's an element to trying to put yourself ahead of the fold almost, and trying to be in that trend setting period. Don't be afraid to use things that have been trending before, because maybe you can be at the forefront of that and bringing them back to life.
Well, that's actually a really good point. I was speaking to a surfboard company this week, and they have got content going back years, beautiful videos, rich videos going back years. And rather than approaching their Pinterest strategy, which is going to be new to them, with lots of new content, they can go back over that past content and then just adapt it to be Pinterest ready and Pinterest first. I always think that we constantly feel like we need to produce and produce new content.
Constantly reinventing the wheel, isn't it? And I don't think that has to be part of it, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that was super interesting, Katt.
I feel like I could talk about this for hours.
Well, and I would say I'll pop up again, the resources. In fact, Tanya, who's behind the scenes, has put, actually, they're quite intense.
Yeah, they're quite lengthy.
I'm going to go back to the banner. But they've also been dropped in our chat on LinkedIn. So if you're watching back, all of those resources are in there. But our half an hour is up. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Katt, and I can't wait to see what else you can do at launch. Welcome to the team.
I am very excited about it. I honestly, for most of my life, not just my career, have kind of been living and breathing social media. So I am more than happy to talk to people about any of this if you have further questions, or if you think we could help you out. I would be more than happy to have a conversation about ways that Launch could help you with your strategy or your performance marketing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katt.
No, thank you so much, Jaye.